John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast. John Anik and Kenny Florian.
I fucking love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole. They're a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John Anik and Kenny Florian.
I could get used to this live stuff, my man. Forget the live to tape. See, I'm less inclined to cuss when we're doing this thing live. Monday, January 22nd, 2024. It's episode 461 of the Anik Florian podcast, live on the DraftKings YouTube channel, after the fact on the DraftKings network, clips, as always, on the Anik Florian podcast network and channel. Kenny Florian live in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's gated, though. You're not getting access to him. Good morning, my man. How we doing?
I got to keep myself protected, insulated, if you will, at all times, John. Just like the guys that fight in the cage. Man, what a weekend, man. A lot to talk about. Can't wait to do it, man. Do you have a good trip back?
It was okay. You know, it was a long one, as many of our fans can attest. We didn't get back to the hotel room till 2:50 a.m. Eastern time and had to be in the lobby at 3:30 a.m. to get picked up. And by the way, Kenny's house would truly be one of the worst possible destinations if you were trying to get something accomplished for so many reasons, right? I mean, he could drag you into his padded jiu-jitsu room if he really wanted to make it hard for you. But there are other things that would be a lot more expeditious. But thank you all for joining us live for our UFC 297 recap today. We will talk to famed mixed martial arts coach Mark Henry in about 30 minutes. On Frankie Edgar's Hall of Fame induction. Congratulations to FE Frankie Edgar. We do have a special guest scheduled in about an hour, so hopefully he will join us. And just given everything that's going on with the scoring of this fight, we talked to the number one source, Sheehan from Severe MMA, coming up in about 75 minutes. But we are all yours for the next 90 minutes at the very least. Ray Longo will join us. A lot of different things to get into at UFC 297. And Ken Flo, we will jump off right there. There is a new UFC middleweight champion, and that has been the norm, right? This belt has changed hands a lot. South Africa's Dricus Du Plessis. He gets it done by split decision over Sean Strickland. 48-47 times 2. Sal D'Amato, the dissenting judge, 48-47 for Strickland. Ken Flo, we got a new champion, and he's a very deserving guy. Nice to see Dricus get it done, and they're certainly celebrating this man in more places than South Africa here on a Monday morning.
No question about it. Well, listen, both fighters were fantastic. Both fought a great fight. And I think that, you know, for me, when I was breaking it down, both fighters have a tendency of trying to lead the dance. And both fighters are at their best when they are pressing forward, when they are pressing the action, when they are backing up their opponents. That's what it kind of allows them to create the offense that they're able to do on fight night. It's not that they're bad necessarily going backwards, but their games tend to flourish when they are moving forward. So for me, it was the guy that was moving forward that was going to win this fight. Not always a perfect indicator, as are the significant strikes for that matter, but they do tell a certain narrative. They weave a certain story throughout the fight that lends itself for judges to kind of come up with some kind of a winner. And for me, it could have gone either way. Some of those rounds were really close, but then you could also make an argument that maybe even 4 rounds could have been for Dricus. Maybe 3 rounds for Strickland, maybe 4 rounds. It was really close, a few of those rounds. And, you know, if you're just looking at stats, or if you're just looking at who's moving forward, if you're just looking at blood and things like that, you know, those aren't always the great indicators. You have to factor in all of those things and then come up with a decision. And because of that, we had a close one. We had a split decision for Dricus. I have no problem with that. Probably wouldn't have had a problem if Sean was the winner in this one. So yes, I did get it right, but I'm not out there, you know, trying to brag to people, because it certainly could have gone the other way. And it was just a wild night of fights in general when it came to decisions. But you know, I'll pause there and let you jump in there, John.
Well, if you were someone who had a betting ticket on Dricus Du Plessis and someone who got it at plus money, congratulations, because it did close essentially a pick, a minus 110 on both sides, right? But no, I was having a little fun at the expense of people who are saying, I fucking told you so, right? Dricus Du Plessis. It's like, well, it was a really close fight. It could have gone either way. There were a lot of different layers to this fight. There were a lot of sharp minds who scored it both ways. Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson scored the fight for Dricus Du Plessis. So John Anik's scorecard certainly doesn't matter as much as Demetrius's does or Kenny Florian's does. I did think Dricus Du Plessis won the fight. I had him winning rounds 2, 3, and 4. When it comes to the takedowns, as one angle of this, right? Dricus Du Plessis, 6 of 11, taking Sean Strickland down. Nobody else had really realized success taking Sean Strickland down in the 185-pound division prior to Dricus Du Plessis. Now, he didn't do a ton with these takedowns, north of 2 minutes of control time. But as Luke Thomas articulated on Instagram and others have said, for me and for Luke and for Demetrius, it was the overall impact of everything that Dricus was doing. He was backing Sean Strickland up. Yeah, he was eating jabs for lunch. Yes, a lot of those did a lot of damage, and those were significant strikes. But it was the overall impact for me of what Dricus Du Plessis was doing offensively that won him this fight in those key middle rounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way I saw it. And when we were breaking this fight down last week, I said that, Dricus has the ability to do a lot of damage in a short amount of time. Now, Strickland certainly did his fair share of damage in this fight as well with that jab, as you mentioned. But I don't think it was enough. He's not known as that guy that's going to hurt you with one shot. It's the accumulation of blows that makes Sean Strickland such a problem. It's also his unorthodox approach and his forward pressure that eventually grinds you down. Dricus wasn't having it in this fight. He was able to turn the tables many times throughout this fight and be the predator. He was able to back up Sean Strickland in this fight and take away a lot of his offense because of it. He stayed busy with kicks. It was his kicks in particular where I think he was finding a lot of success. I also think when he was landing the power shots, he was landing the heavier blows, especially a little bit later in the fight.
Yeah.
And those takedowns mixed in with all of that offense was able to tell a story that he was a little bit more successful when it came to effectiveness of striking and effectiveness of grappling.
And in terms of big shots, Sean Strickland, I think, could use more of those. And part of the reason why Sean Strickland has been involved in a lot of close fights, 3 recent split decisions dating to February of 2022 against Jack Hermanson, Jared Cannonier, and now Dricus Du Plessis, is because maybe while his jab is fantastic and not seen all that often in mixed martial arts, that was a huge part of what he got done here. And there was just a lot of diversification to what Dricus Du Plessis did. Numbers really don't matter with respect. In terms of the numbers, yes, Sean Strickland landed 173 significant strikes to Dricus Du Plessis' 137. Headshots, 157 of 387 for Strickland, 81 of 283 for Dricus Du Plessis. But herein lies the rub for a lot of people as we go to some of the other columns, right? 6 of 11 for takedowns for Dricus Du Plessis, 32 of 37 on his body strikes compared to 10 of 15 to Sean Strickland. Strickland, 6 of 6 on the lower leg attacks, or the leg attacks, I guess I should say. Du Plessis, 24 of 34. So Dricus Du Plessis was a very busy man in the middle of this fight, and Sean certainly acknowledged some adversity when it came to what he believes was a clash of heads. I still haven't had the chance to watch this fight back. I thought it was a clean strike on the broadcast. Obviously, I don't get the benefit of the doubt in real time. But Kenny, I just thought overall, given what Dricus Du Plessis did, there's an argument to score the fight for him. 61% of the listeners that I polled, scored this fight for Sean Strickland, but I'm happy for the new champion.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that you're accurate with what you're talking about in regards to the middle of the fight really belonging to someone like Dricus Du Plessis. And that's the way I scored it. I had rounds 2, 3, and 4 for Dricus. I think that rounds 1 and 5 were probably for Sean Strickland. 1, certainly. 5 was even close, in my opinion, because I thought the power shots that were landing for Dricus were a little bit more effective, but Sean definitely was throwing way more volume in round 5, which is why I leaned towards Sean in that one. Yeah, I think that Sean kind of let it slip out of his hands a little bit. I saw an interesting comment, and apologies for not seeing it online. I don't remember who really said it, But they were talking about also Chris Curtis in regards to Sean Strickland and how because they spar so much, at some points during the actual fight, they get caught into some sparring-like rounds or sparring-like exchanges. I think that's more of a case for Chris Curtis than it is for Sean Strickland because Strickland's out there to fight. But there were some modes where he was kind of taking his time a little bit too much. And if you do that against someone like a Dricus Du Plessis, they will take over. They will start to back you up and land heavier shots. Dricus is a massive 185-pounder. He's extremely powerful, more powerful, I think, than Sean Strickland. And I think that really was the difference here. It really was able to kind of stop Sean Strickland from just advancing forward with that jab. The kicks were able to nullify that jab a little bit for a while. I think rounds 2, 3, and 4, the kicks really were the story for me, as were the takedowns. And even though Sean was able to thwart off some of those takedown attempts, was able to get back to his feet, he's still expending energy and is carrying the weight of Dricus Du Plessis, which will take effect on the amount of potency that you have in your strikes, will take your conditioning away a little bit, and also kind of take its toll on you mentally. Even someone as tough as Sean Strickland, mentally, physically, spiritually, can succumb to that level of pressure and carrying the weight of an opponent like a Dricus Du Plessis. And we were talking about significant strikes. I have some things printed out here. Not all significant strikes are created equal, right? I say that all the time, and it's very true. And I think that was the case here. But I thought Strickland started out really well with front kicks and jabs. I thought that was the tone of round 1, which he won. And then Dricus with those takedowns, landing the bigger shots, those blitzing attacks, that forward pressure started to take its toll on Sean. And you could hear in round 3, Sean's corner saying, "Hey, we didn't like that round. You got to get back into the picture here."
Round 2 really is the one that I want to watch back, but we're going to keep it on the martial arts here for a while. But I did think, that was pretty telling when Nixick was like, I didn't like that round. And I was sort of thinking, if I'm Strickland right after that round 3, that's not what we're looking for. I know the round was relatively close, but that was not what Sean Strickland was looking for. In terms of Dricus Du Plessis' style, there have been a lot of professional fighters who have publicly or privately criticized him and said, oh, he's not very good. And, certainly there are things that maybe are undeniable. The footwork is awkward and unorthodox and maybe just a little bit sloppy. But Kenny, in terms of this fighter, he is an offensive force. He is an offensive fighter that prioritizes offense. He prioritizes finishes, right? Doesn't have a lot of decision wins. This was the first time he had realized a 4th round. And I think a lot of his style is something that is rooted in South African culture. And I might lose some people here, but Kenny, part of his martial arts style is rooted in just straight fucking desire and will. And I think in a championship setting, right, he really went for it on this night, even if he lost the final round. And I think that was a big part of it in those middle rounds. The guy really was trying to kill the opposition, so to speak. And I think that's why he's a world champion here 2 days later.
I think there's no question about that. I think there's a lot of different sports or settings where you could take a certain guy and you go, man, this guy is extremely powerful or he's extremely fast. And those things stand out and they end up kind of keeping them above everybody else in that weight class. That's not really the case for someone like Dricus Du Plessis. It's not even the case for someone like Sean Strickland. Both of these fighters are strong and are good because of the sum of all of their parts put together. Right. And as you mentioned, you talk about someone like a Dricus Du Plessis, who is also extremely durable and extremely tough. Right. He was dealing with that eye early on. He was able to battle back. He had some good defense with that shelling defense. And it may not look pretty. It's not what a coach or, some kind of online tutorial would tell you to do specifically from an execution standpoint. It might even look a little bit sloppy. But it doesn't matter because the way he's able to put it all together allows him to win rounds. And I would argue for people who are in the sport, for people who have trained in MMA or jiu-jitsu, the most difficult guy to deal with oftentimes is that guy who is not moving at a rhythm or a pace or in a way that you are used to. I would much prefer to go against, in many cases, someone who is highly technical, who I could read their patterns and movements really well, something that I'm used to. as opposed to someone who I have no idea what they're going to do next. And Dricus brings that. Again, not the prettiest thing, but it doesn't have to. Sometimes in combat, it doesn't have to be pretty. You just got to get it done.
And constantly switching stances, just creating different things to be looked at, and just a lot of offense coming almost immediately off of those stance switches. And Alexander Volkanovski, another guy who constantly keeps you off rhythm with stance switches, even if he is a little bit more technical. Now, in terms of a Sean Strickland matchup for Israel Adesanya versus a Dricus Du Plessis matchup, I just want to sort of piggyback off of Dricus's style here. Not that we need to spin this forward in terms of the calendar or UFC 300 or anything else, but if you're Izzy, right? I mean, would you rather rematch Strickland or fight Dricus Du Plessis?
If I'm Izzy, I would prefer to rematch Sean Strickland.
You think that's an easier fight with respect?
Yeah, I think it's an easier fight to manage. Now he didn't exactly do the best job in that first fight. I do not want to take away what Sean Strickland accomplished in that first fight against Israel Adesanya. It was unbelievable, deserved it. I would say he was extremely dominant against Israel Adesanya, one of the best, if not the best, middleweight of all time. But I think it's a way easier fight to predict and to manage against Sean Strickland than it is against Dricus Du Plessis. He's awkward. He's not the cleanest striker. He's not even the cleanest grappler, but he's going to be in your face. And if he can adopt that same style of Sean Strickland, which is what he does, which means backing up your opponents, taking away their leg kicks, from there, it's a much more simplified fight for Dricus Du Plessis than it is for Israel Adesanya, especially when we talk about the takedowns that he has to deal with. Israel Adesanya is a fantastic fighter. He's amazing. One of the best strikers that I've ever seen compete. But on the ground, there are vulnerabilities there. We have seen him susceptible being taken down, controlled, and beat up there. And I think with someone as powerful as Dricus Du Plessis, who stays as busy as Dricus, that's where he can also bring the pain on that level as well.
We're not going to get an immediate rematch between Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis, even if it is a fight that I would love to see again. How would you handicap those two in a second setting? Do you feel like these guys would be 5-5 if they fought 10 times? Do you feel like somebody would have the upper hand? I know it's sort of a difficult question, but they clearly seemed pretty evenly matched, at least on this Saturday night.
Yeah, I've said this many times before. Some fighters are just kind of made for each other based on their styles. I think this is a clear example of that. They're both very similar in their approach and how they get things done. I think that if I'm looking at this fight, I think Sean Strickland could probably learn a little bit more from this fight than maybe DDP. Yep. So because of that, I think we'll always see a kind of a close fight. But I would not count Sean Strickland out of that equation of maybe even winning more than Dricus. But it doesn't work that way. Sometimes you fight someone and you never, ever see them again, no matter how close you guys are in rankings and things like that. This sport is just nuts. Okay, you get one shot at it. That's what you have to make as far as an assumption in this sport if you are a fighter. And you got to do the best of what you have. And I certainly see them kind of going back and forth, but I do think Sean could have made more adjustments off that first performance than maybe DDP.
I chronicled a little bit on the broadcast the extent to which Sean Strickland has repeatedly stepped up for this promotion, right? Dating really to the Alex Pereira fight, when he put his number 4 ranking on the line against a man that nobody wanted to face. Pay-per-view debut for Sean Strickland, and of course, it didn't last very long against Alex Pereira. Fast forward 6 months, January 2023, Kelvin Gastelum can't fight Nassourdini Mavov. Who steps into the main event? Sean Strickland, right? So when he got the championship fight against Israel Adesanya, I know Dricus Du Plessis said that fight shouldn't have happened. I vehemently disagree. Sean Strickland really deserved that opportunity, won the world title, and then a few months later here, they needed somebody to headline in Toronto, maybe hoping that they could turn around at UFC 300. And who stepped up again, Kenny? Sean Strickland, right? So I think the guy deserves a lot of credit. And the good news is his bank account is now fatter than ours, you know? And let's see what Cody's pulling up here. All right, some odds. Jesus, you scared me. I thought we had a fucking special guest. I lost my train of thought, you know, but Sean Strickland deserves a lot of credit. for what he has done, even if he's not going to get an immediate opportunity to fight for his title again. I thought he was a worthy champion. He has become an MMA superstar. There were actually comparisons to Conor McGregor, believe it or not, right? Just given how exponentially this man's following has grown really since the Adesanya fight in September, but I actually think it dates to the Alex Pereira fight in July of 2022. So before we spin things forward for both of these athletes, what do you have for us on what was largely a very productive week and 5-month stretch for the superstar Sean Strickland?
No question about it. And this is why I picked him as personality of the year in 2023. People think it was like, oh, he's got this lovely personality with all this glowing charisma, and that's why I'm picking him. No, he's just authentic, for better or worse. It doesn't mean, you or me want to hang out with Sean Strickland 24/7 or whatever, that we agree with everything he says. But, I think there is this kind of magic that happens around athletes, people that are out in the limelight, that are bringing a certain level of authenticity. And I think Sean has definitely done that. He doesn't give a shit about what you think. He's going to tell you what he thinks, though, for better or worse, and he's going to fight his ass off. And people appreciate that, man. When you give 110% of what you think, of what you want to do, of what you enjoy in this world, and you actually, prove it, beyond words, that says something. Sean Strickland is that dude. And I think that whether he won or lost here, I think he won. Not only did he change his life yet again with this performance and with this huge fight that brought a lot of eyes, but I think that a lot of people would love to see him fight for the belt again. And I think his next fight, which may or may not be for a title, depending on what happens, will be another huge fight. That's a guy that the UFC can rely on. What the UFC promotion wants, what every MMA promotion wants, an organization, they want a fighter, okay, that people want to follow, that people want to see compete. Doesn't matter. Champion, not champion, doesn't matter. You can have an extremely successful career if you are a guy that people want to see fight. Sean Strickland, already being a champion, has accomplished a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him fight for the belt in the near future again.
I just would like to see him out of the UFC Apex. I don't know that we need him in main events at the Apex anymore. I would love to see him co-main event on pay-per-view. He certainly has a great 5-round style, but I really think you hit on the rub. There's a lot to be gained in this fight for Sean Strickland, despite the loss, and I do think that just a little bit more commitment to fight-ending consequential blows could be one of the things that you see from Sean Strickland his next time around, to try to leave the judges out of the equation, because even though it's tired to say don't leave it in the judges' hands, there is tremendous risk, obviously, when you are not able to put the opposition away. All right, we will spin things forward for Dricus Du Plessis in about 60 seconds. But DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL playoffs, is bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Championship games are now set, and the road to Las Vegas goes through Baltimore and San Francisco. Ravens favored by 3 right now over the Chiefs. 49ers 6.5-point home favorites over the Detroit Lions. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code AFPOD. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code AFPOD. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus. Age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right, UFC 300 is 11 weeks away. Dateline Las Vegas, T-Mobile Arena. Kenny, I can't say to you, I don't know what the financial ramifications are for a pay-per-view point accruing champion like Dricus Du Plessis to fight April 13th at UFC 300 versus fighting at UFC 302 without as much support around him, right? I don't know if that's a $2 million swing. I truly don't know. I'm just going to say to you, UFC 300 is 11 weeks away. Du Plessis' right foot is in a boot. His face is shut. So certainly there would be something suboptimal about having that type of abbreviated training camp, but Du Plessis said it sounded amazing. So what do you think about all that?
John, I don't see a problem. He's got another eye. He's got another leg.
Yeah,
Okay. So he's perfectly fine in my book. No, I guess it depends on the severity. I think the eye is going to be fine. Certainly. I'm not sure what's going on with the foot. That could certainly be a broken metatarsal or something, or a foot itself, or just could be nothing, just could be bruised. So I think, from a medical standpoint, we got to find out exactly what is going on. But 11 weeks, I think, is plenty of time for a person to get back in there. And not only is UFC 300 this epic event where you can make a lot of money on it because, it's this milestone for the UFC, but I mean, look at his opponent, Israel Adesanya. This is a guy who brings in a lot of pay-per-view buys, and Israel Adesanya, I think it seems like, is also intrigued with this opportunity as well, right? I mean, here's a guy, he said what he wanted to be away from the cage for like at least 14 months or 2 years. I forget what he said, but now he's like, let me change my mind a little bit. I think he's seeing that, with this changing of the guard, he has this opportunity to come in here and regain his throne, then maybe go in there, get the rematch against Strickland. So I think all three of these guys can really benefit from this scenario in a lot of different ways, based on who is available, who wants in, and even the aftermath of that fight. So really intriguing stuff here. But I think 11 months is certainly enough time, again, depending on the severity of the injuries of Dricus Du Plessis, for him to get back in there and fight someone like Adesanya. Those opportunities, again, do not come around very often, and it could be quite the money grab for all parties involved.
If you're asking me for my prediction as to what headlines UFC 300 in 11 weeks, I think it will be Du Plessis versus Adesanya. And what a story for the South African to be the last man to make the walk at the historic UFC 300. Now, Alex Pereira seemingly has interest, and he could defend his belt against Magomed Ankalaev that night. I think you're going to see Alex Pereira. And you know what? Maybe the headliner is actually Pereira versus Ankalaev. I think that's probably the direction in which I would be leaning. I should not try to get too predictive here, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw both of those title fights at UFC 300. But who knows the extent to which Adesanya is even healthy and ready to get into what would be a full training camp right now in a couple of weeks or so. I do think for Dricus Du Plessis to be in an active competition cycle, there could be a huge advantage there. So I do think you see Du Plessis at UFC 300. I do think that Alex Pereira can make 185 pounds if he were to be afforded the opportunity, but I'm not sure that as a newly minted 205-pound champion, they're going to give him an opportunity to now drop back down to try to win the belt that he lost. I just don't see it playing out that way. But I do think that that Israel Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis has a ton of legs for UFC 300, and the betting line is already out, and it's very close on paper. All right. I hesitate to bring up too many things as far as the scoring is concerned right now, because we are going to talk to Sheehan later in the program. But let me at least talk about this. The whole notion that to be the champion, you have to decisively beat the champion, right? This is not boxing, even if that is an antiquated theme for that sport as well. But that sport has 12 rounds that are 3 minutes. And perhaps back in the day when there was a close round, that round would go to the champion. Certainly on the surface, Kenny, you cannot give a close round to the champion, Sean Strickland, just because he made the walk as the champion on that night. That is patently absurd. But I understand why many, many of our fans, more than you can imagine, I'm talking thousands upon thousands of fans, feel dissatisfied when a champion loses his title by close split decision. But it's one of the many inconvenient truths in mixed martial arts. I know Sheehan and others don't like to hear me banging on the criteria or the fact that we don't have enough judges, but Alex Davis and others have suggested to me that there's so much that we can do to make this sport better. And I do believe that we need to be more evolutionary in thought when it comes to trying to make mixed martial arts better, so that the rightful guys always win, and so that the sport doesn't have situations like Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev this weekend. But Kenny, as long as we have the current system, there are going to be close split decisions, and a lot of those are going to happen in title fights. And that's exactly what we had this weekend.
I agree. I definitely think there needs to be this evolution of thought. I think that's a beautiful statement. However, what we may disagree on, because the way I see it is sometimes we try to make things better, quote unquote, by injecting kind of more processes, right? And maybe I'm kind of divulging how I see like governmental things, but a lot of times we're like, hey, if we just bring in more laws, if we just bring in more politicians, and if we just monitor as many things as possible, we can make things better. And a lot of times it complicates the process. But I think what we need more than anything else is more quality people in the proper places. I think that's something that can help the sport itself. Now, that too is open to interpretation. But yeah, it's tough, man. No one's going to be satisfied with a lot of things in general, but I think that a lot of times we repeat these things that just aren't true. Like this whole thing of like, he didn't overwhelmingly beat the champ, and that's why I think Strickland won.
Right.
It's like, hey, you may think Sean Strickland won, and you may have a great argument. Is that the argument? No, it's not. That is just some like repetitive BS that is kind of talked about because you heard commentators say it in boxing 20 years ago, and they've been saying it for the last 20 years. So you think that is now a truth. No, that is just some like loose perception of what we think should happen in the sport. There is nowhere in the rules of judging a round or a series of rounds where that indicates who won or lost. Like that is not in the picture whatsoever.
All right, we are very happy to now be joined by two special individuals.
Yo,
this guy.
The newly minted UFC Hall-of-Famer Frankie Edgar and his chief corner Mark Henry. We wanted to surprise Mark this morning because he's crying about his
Mark, I can't see.
build.
Is that a MAGA hat? Is that a MAGA hat you're wearing?
Bro.
So Frankie Edgar
That's Bills,
on the
baby.
mat.
Mafia.
We wanted to bring your chief corner on the Anik Florian podcast today because we didn't want to bother Frankie, but I texted the link to my man Frankie this morning, and he's on the mat. So I just wanted to bring you two guys together for a minute because, gosh, man, like if I was coming up with a top 5 list of my favorite people I've met in MMA, 15, 17 years doing this, like I kind of would need slots for you two individuals. So I know I speak for everybody, Kenny, and the entire sport. Congratulations, Frankie. Tremendous accomplishment. First ballot Hall of Famer. Doesn't even begin to describe it, my man.
No, thank you guys, man. You know, the words that you gave, my wife said you made her cry yesterday with the words, and you know, you're the best with that, and I couldn't have a better person, you know, talk about that, talk that way about me. Mark's the man. Is definitely fitting to be on this call with me because I wouldn't be where I am without him. We started this together, and it's cool that we get to see it all the way through.
So, Mark, were you watching the broadcast Saturday night when this all went down?
No, I don't watch MMA, bro. But my phone was blowing up, and everybody was sending me the video. You know, I had a tear going down. I was trying to go on YouTube and see what happened. Then I got the full video, man. It was so great because he didn't know. I called him up right away. He didn't know.
No clue,
bro. No one in MMA deserves it more than Frankie. I was so happy for him. I was on cloud 9, and it definitely made me feel better after the sting last night. So I'm just so happy for Frankie, man, and it's just so well deserved. No one deserves it more than this guy, man.
So we only want to keep Frankie for a couple of minutes, but I do want to set this up for our audience because Frankie had an exceedingly busy day on show day, right? Media appearances. He was on a microphone, meet and greet, greeting a lot of people. And you had no idea. And as your friend, I kind of want to be like, hey man, like maybe don't fucking drink all day.
Bro, dude, right? They put me in the draft. They put me in the DraftKings suite with the guys. They're handing out shots. I'm drinking beers. Dude, definitely someone's going to give me a little heads up.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to spoil it for you. At least now you'll have time to prepare your speech. Kenny, I just want to give you a chance to talk to Frankie before we let him back to the mats.
Frankie, you know, you've obviously accomplished so much in this sport. Was there any idea that you were going to be able to accomplish as much as you did when you first got into this, or even when you first got into the UFC for the first time?
You know, I mean, I don't think I ever looked that far, especially as a young kid. You kind of just look to the next, you know, goal or the next task, or the next fight, I guess. You know, but I know the type of person I am. I always strive to be the best. I remember someone asked me, like, you know, what do I want out of, and this was kind of early in my career, like, what do you want out of the, you know, your career? I was like, I want to be that Michael Jordan of this. So I knew that's how you had to have that mindset to, you know, achieve all that. I may not be the Michael Jordan of it, but Hall of Fame ain't too bad.
It's incredible, man. I never thought an American MMA fighter could be as beloved as the Iceman Chuck Liddell, and you're right there with him, my man. Get working on that speech, man. Hopefully not too much howlerhead before that podium appearance, but we can't wait to see both of you at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Mark, I'm going to keep you for a few minutes. Frankie, you're a fucking great egg. Thanks for hopping on.
He's a movie star. He's a movie star now, bro. He's a big
That's right. Congrats on that too, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, I appreciate you, brother. Have a good day.
All right, guys, be good. Take care.
Thanks, Frankie.
Later, bro.
All right, so now we
was
shine the
funny.
spotlight
Oh, that
on
was funny.
one of my favorite human beings in the world, chief corner, of course, for the newly announced Hall of Famer Frankie Edgar, Mark Henry. We don't get to see you as much, my man, but it's nice to see you, man. How you been?
Bro, great seeing you guys, man. You guys are the best, bro. It's so great seeing you guys, and so happy for Frankie, man. It's so well deserved. You know, a guy that fought in three different weight divisions, and a guy that we used to have to put rocks in his pockets before the weigh-ins so he wouldn't be embarrassed at 155. And that's no joke, man. We used to have to make this guy eat and drink before the weigh-ins because we didn't want to be embarrassed or give the opponent too much confidence.
So I don't have any dates to confirm, but Thursday, June 27th is probably going to be the UFC Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So I'd imagine we'll be able to drag you to Las Vegas in the to the desert in the summer to be there for Frankie.
I have anything for Frankie, bro. Anything for you guys, anything for Frankie.
Well, dude, I think they might give you a microphone, so just be careful. You know, these Hall of Fame inductees need inductors, so I'm just putting that in the back of your mind. But I'm
not the guy, bro.
You're not the guy. All right. So it is interesting, though, the way they like surprise these guys on the broadcast, right? Because knowing Frankie the way I do and knowing he was doing an appearance with my brother, I'm thinking, man, like then after the fact, this dude's going to have to do a bunch of media when he's got like nothing left, you know? But yeah, what was it like for you just in that moment as your phone's blowing up? I mean, I'd imagine you knew this date was coming, just maybe not this soon. I don't know.
Yeah, man, in my eyes, you're always going to see things different, for someone that you've been around so much. And, I just think that people, they saw Frankie fight, but they didn't see Frankie train, man. He's just, the best professional I've ever seen, man. Not only that, like just having him in the room around guys like, Marlon Moraes, Eddie Alvarez, Kalen Chukagan, Corey Anderson, and so on, all the great fighters that we've had, Zabit, and just like his presence there and him being the captain and, everybody just watching him come in the earliest, leave the latest, and his work ethic. I mean, Frankie loved it, man. Like Frankie truly is a fighter's fighter. Like he lived it, man. He didn't talk about it. He lived it. He enjoyed it. And, he's just an absolute coach's dream, man. And a brother, that's for sure, too.
Mark, what do you think would be I mean, it's hard to define just one thing, but if there's one thing that stood out to you as Frankie Edgar, the competitor, what would it be? What separated him from everybody else?
There's just so many things, like I said, he loved what he did, but his speed, I think you have to have something, and any, if you're going at the highest of the highest in, in any sport and competing like you did, Kenny. And, with him, I think his speed really helped him out. His foot speed, his hand speed helped him out. But just his determination, man, his toughness, his love for the sport. As a student, he would just listen to anything you said, like I would call out stuff and like he would just like do it in an instant, man. Like it was just like the bond that we had and just him trying to, like, he was just a white belt, man. Like he just worked so hard. Every day was like his first day in the sport. Like when you were training, it was incredible. And sitting down and doing the game planning was such a joy, even for you, Kenny. Like I can't tell you how many times you made me nervous, and I always tried to plan ahead. And I tried to find it, but I had stuff written down for you, like 3 different game plans for you. I'm not joking at all.
I love it.
I believe it.
We're getting ready for you, because I don't know how you two didn't meet, but
I know.
I'm happy that you guys didn't.
Yeah. Well, Mark, we just wanted to grab you for a few minutes. I know you probably stepped outside the pizzeria, but you're all class.
That's
and congratulations. Amazing. But can't wait to see you probably in late June, my man. Congratulations. And we'll let you get back to it. But have a great winter, man. I do think your Buffalo Bills eventually will be heard from. And you're just one of my favorites. I had to grab you for a few minutes today, bro.
Thanks so much, guys. You guys are the best, man. It's great seeing you guys, man.
Great to see you,
so
Mark.
happy for Frankie again. All right,
Have
guys.
a good day, Coach. There
Go
he is,
Bills.
Mark Henry.
Go Bills. Go Bills.
Ha! Mark Henry with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. And probably a good time for me to rip up my $2,500 ticket on the Philadelphia Eagles to win the NFC. I have been hedging that all season. So people who think that I just threw away $3,000, I didn't really do that. And then we always try to take down those Buffalo Bills. Kenny, mission accomplished. $300.
Oh, you didn't show that to Mark, though.
To win the AFC, and we'll rip that up for the viewership right now. Yeah, I didn't want to rub it in. I waited to could get him out of there. All right, well, Lucy is up in the nicotine pouch game with breakers. Pouches packing a little something extra inside. So what are Lucy breakers exactly? Well, if you know your pouches, you know the nicotine doesn't hit immediately, and neither does the flavor. Well, the geniuses at Lucy came up with a brilliant way to fix both problems. They put a mini liquid capsule into each breaker's pouch, so you grab a breaker's pouch, break the capsule. Yes, with your teeth. Makes a really satisfying pop, actually. You put it in your lip and enjoy the immediate nicotine and flavor release. A new kind of pouch technology, and it is only available from Lucy. 100% pure nicotine, 6 delicious flavors. That includes unique ones like apple, ice, or espresso, and also some classics like mint or mango. So break up with your dusty gas station pouches and go to lucy.co/AFpod and use promo code AFPOD to get 20% off your first order. Lucy offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. Lucy.co/AFPod. That is lucy.co. Use the code AFPOD to get 20% off. And as always, free shipping. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. All right. Congratulations to Frankie Edgar. How cool was that, by the way, Kempfly? I kind of wanted to surprise Mark there today, but it just goes to show you, where's Frankie Edgar on a fucking Monday morning, like 2 days after getting word that he's in the Hall of Fame? On the fucking mats.
Training. What a savage, man.
And I did shout out Renee Edgar because she has been a huge force behind the entire Frankie Edgar operation. And I know for a lot of people and a lot of wives and a lot of mixed martial arts fans, even men who are spouses of fighters, right? Like they want to hear that significant other get shouted out because it doesn't happen primarily without that person. Very interesting to hear Mark Henry talk about the Kenny Florian preparation, right? It's like, how do you prepare for a southpaw that is an angry southpaw, Kenny Florian, nasty prick, Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, elbows, and I think a lot of that preparation is probably jiu-jitsu stuff that isn't necessarily going in Mark Henry's pike. But yeah, tough southpaw. It is interesting that you guys never fought, Kenny.
I know, dude. I always, again, if you're, near the top of the weight class and stuff, you're always looking for potential competition, right? And I always thought that Frankie and I would meet at some point. And just like Mark said, I always had specific approaches of how I thought I would approach someone like Frankie Edgar. I even trained with Frankie Edgar over at Renzo Gracie's. And I remember, because I potentially was going to face him, I remember just flopping onto my back and just kind of defending against Frankie, just kind of not doing anything, not really showing him anything. Just because I thought we would face each other one day. But, it's amazing to see a guy like Frankie who, consistently just got better and proved himself again and again, and went from being like, wow, he's a lot tougher than I thought, to, man, can anybody beat this guy? Like, he was the first guy to go out there and solve that BJ Penn puzzle when BJ was BJ Penn, right? In his best weight class, 155 pounds. And the fact that he was able to do that not once, but twice, is amazing. Just that alone. His fights against Gray Maynard, all the times that Frankie Edgar proved himself to be the Rocky of mixed martial arts was just always a pleasure. And just to be in the same room with him, to compete in the same weight class as him, was an absolute honor. And like Mark said, and I think like you said, John, no one deserves it more than Frankie Edgar. That was a sure thing, and just great to see.
And I just have to say quickly before we get to Ray, because people like behind the scenes stuff, let me just tell you, and I'll look straight into the camera, back in 2008, 2009, we had a lot of conversations about this in Bristol, Connecticut, right? As the president of Team Florian, we really liked that Frankie Edgar matchup. We were pursuant of that Frankie Edgar matchup. We wanted that fight. We didn't get that fight. Congratulations to my good friend Frankie Edgar, the UFC Hall-of-Famer. All right, let's get to the star of the program and the Ray Longo Minute.
It's now time for the Ray Longo Minute.
I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
The Ray Longo Minute. Starring Ray Longo. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
Hey.
All right, look at this. Wow.
There he is.
I'm hiding.
Ray Longo.
I'm hiding in the bathroom today. How does it sound?
You're in the bathroom?
I'm hiding today from the
All right.
door.
It sounds
Yeah.
okay. Your hair looks fantastic. He combed his hair for the show.
No, let me tell you something. I need a haircut.
Do you don't have a bald spot on the back, do you?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Do you? It is amazing, and I'm not naming any names, but there are some people who have a huge bald spot on the back, and it's amazing to me that they would go to a barber and say, yeah, keep a little hair on there so I can comb it over that bald spot. And I say this because I'm a guy who has my own hair issues, right? I've been shaving my head since I was 14, like every few days. So we all have our issues. People think I'm going bald, right? No, I mean, I got a full head of hair. Just look at my twin brother, right? We all have our issues, but I just don't understand how you could, like, these guys just got to shave their fucking head. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about those other guys.
Wow, you're coming out piss and vinegar, baby.
Kenny brought up your hair, not me. Kenny brought it up.
Oh, man.
I
Listen, I'm just trying to hold on to it as long as I can. That's it. Period.
No,
That's
I
the
get
end
it.
of the story.
Yeah. So,
But I do, but that bald spot's been there for like 15 years. Matt Serra's been pointing it out to me ever since the first day he noticed it. So I know it's there. I don't really see it myself, but
if I were you, I would turn it around on a height challenge guy like me and say, hey, John, you know why you've never seen that bald spot? Because you're up to my fucking peck.
Hey,
all right, Ray.
Let me jump in on Frankie Edgar, man, because again, you guys hit on a lot of stuff. Well deserved. You look, blue collar guy. I think he did his best work at 55. I really do. At that time, he was buzzing through everybody. He was a little guy. Nobody could figure him out. I think Mark Henry did a great job on him, and that's a behind the scenes story. I'm going to say is that I would be at fights, and I mean Mark really put his time in with this kid. I would be at fights like Frankie's not fighting. They got another guy fighting, but Mark would bring his equipment just to work with Frankie in the dressing room. Like any free time, I guess this was at the beginning that Mark had, he was working with him, and he would always ask me, can you take a look at him? Then I think he took him to Freddie Roach. Like he was just so involved. That relationship really is part of the success because Mark really, you could see, put his heart and soul into that. And I watched him work tirelessly, and that's only when I saw it. You know what I mean? That was by coincidence. I don't even think he should have been working with him at that point. Like we're in the backstage, we're back getting other guys ready, and he's warming Frankie up like he's fighting, but they were just hanging out waiting for their guy. And if they had any downtime, they were going to use it. And Mark really, I think, did his homework on everything. You could see from the beginning the attachment they had, and it just got bigger and bigger. And, man, nobody deserves it better than Frankie Edgar, just based on the fact that he was undersized. Everybody made him go down. I didn't even think he lost those fights at 55. They were all close. Right. Nobody ever blew that guy out of the water.
Right, the Benson Henderson fight, right?
Yeah, 100%. So blue-collar kid, great for the sport. Great family guy. You can't say enough about him. Nobody, you can't meet Frankie Edgar and say, oh, that guy's a dick. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? So
he's the man.
Great family. Even his dad would always be at the fights, if I remember correctly. And everybody was just, that brought a tear to my eye, man. Frankie Edgar is a gangster, man. And that kid, for what he did, what he had is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, his mom's a great lady as well. And honestly, the only guy he ever ducked was Ken Flo his whole career. So, all right, a lot to get into with you when it comes to UFC 297. There is a chance that the newly minted UFC middleweight champion, Dricus Du Plessis, will join us here in about 10 minutes. But how about Dricus Du Plessis? What was your overall UFC 297 viewing experience like, though, Ray? It was a long pay-per-view. I felt like it looked on paper like we could get 5 decisions, and that was essentially what we got. So it was a weird night. Some of these nights can just be a little bit weird. The main event was fantastic, but what was your 297 viewing experience like, Raymond?
Yeah, you're kind of hitting on it. I mean, I enjoyed a bunch of the fights. That bantamweight fight was absolutely fantastic between I did the Russian kid and the kid from Florida. No, that's was that featherweight?
You're talking about a prelim.
Yeah, it was maybe the third.
Garrett Armfield, Brad Katona. No, you're talking about Ramon Tavares and
that's
Cerise.
the one. Yeah, really, what a great fight that was.
Amazing.
Amazing fight. That was an amazing fight, especially for a rematch where, you know, the Russian kid had knocked him out last time. So it was stopped early. There was controversy. But, man, what a great idea for them to put that back together again, because that fight looks like it's always going to produce. But and I'll tell you, another fight where there's no winner or loser. I think both guys did absolutely fantastic. You know, the main card, I like the Woodson fight. I thought that was good.
Look at Ray just diving into the prelims. I mean, can we get Moiseev and Arnold Allen before you fucking rifle through all the prelims?
Wait, hold on a second. Wait, Woodson was after Arnold Allen. What are you talking about?
Sean Woodson was not even the featured prelim, Ray, but I don't know, man.
Was Arnold Allen? What was Arnold Allen? He was the first fight of the night.
On the main card.
Yeah, we're back
I'm just having fun.
Listen, there's a good chance I didn't even watch the fight, so don't do that to me.
A lot of split decision.
A lot of split decision.
I thought, you know, the Canadian men went 0-7 on this night. I do think two of them could have won, maybe.
Oh my God.
Surrey City and Brad Katona, but I thought Sean Woodson beat Charles Jourdain, you know.
100%. 100%. You know, so that was a little confusing when they announced it, but the Mike Malott fight was mind-boggling. I mean, he had to be a minus 20,000 going into that third round. How does that happen? He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Come on, man. We got to see better than that, man. No attempt at escaping. I just that shit I don't get at that level. I go through this in the gym all the time because, you know, guys want to fight. They want to fight. You got to be squared away now, man. It's you know, you're going to get exposed if you have a weakness somewhere, you know.
Yeah,
so
and even managing his energy throughout the fight, you know, especially if that's something that has kind of plagued him in the past, and you're going to get someone like Neil Magny, who knows how to come back, who's going to be conditioned throughout. He's not going to quit. If he was going to quit, he would have quit against Ian Gary when he basically fought with one leg, right? I mean, he's not going to go away. And in that one, I just feel like Mike Malott didn't manage his energy, right? He allowed Neil Magny back into the fight, and he kind of just sat there. His energy was gone in rounds 1 and 2, and he just sat there and took a beating from him. Like
Kenny, all you have to do is survive that round. You won.
Yeah.
There was how many? A minute left, a minute and a half.
No, less. I think there was less than 30 seconds left in the fight, right? Or no? Am I wrong on that? I think
it was towards the end. So I think you're right. But I mean, all he had to do was survive that, and he's winning that fight. That was
15 seconds to go at the 4:45 mark, as you see there. Thank you, Cody. Yes. So, I mean, I do think that perhaps I was guilty maybe of overstepping a little bit when it came to some of the hyperbolic stuff I was saying about Mike Malott. I mean, I stop at suggesting that he's overrated, right? But like, the guy never had a decision win, so experience has got to count for something. I give Neil Magny a whole lot of credit, but
100%.
Dominic Cruz on the broadcast, Kenny and Ray, at one point mentioned like Gilbert Durinho Burns and Shavkat Rakhmonov, right? These are the guys that are awaiting Mike Malott, and I just think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, especially when it comes to certain guys in certain countries, with all due respect to Canada, right? We are dying to have a man take the torch, right? And we went into this fight thinking without a shadow of a doubt, the most talented Canadian mixed martial arts male right now is Mike Malott, and maybe Charles Jourdain and Brad Katona are the other guys who maybe could make a push to the top 15, right? All three of them lost.
And it's why Neil Magny is such a great gatekeeper. I mean that in the most respectful way possible, because again, you are going to find out your weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Even if you're able to get by him, he's going to expose something potentially. And if you are getting past someone like Neil Magny, you are absolutely legit, because Neil Magny isn't going to bend over for anybody. And I think we got the true story for now in 2024, where Mike Malott's at this stage of his career, and was certainly pretty dominant up into that last point, but it doesn't matter. It's how you do over the whole fight, right? Not how you start, how you finish. And Neil Magny was able to get right back to it and show everybody why he's Neil Magny, why he has so many damn wins in the UFC.
I mean, Kenny, I think it would have been better if he was losing the whole fight. You know what I mean? And but this is, you're ahead. You're winning. You're controlling 10 minutes of the fight. What were the odds going? What were the live odds going into that third round?
He was minus 1,200 at one point.
Minus 1,200.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you explain that? And I know guys that had him. He was the last thing. He was the last guy to win a parlay. And I going into the third round, you had to be jumping and screaming like it was.
Yeah, you're not cashing out early. You can be sure. What did you guys make of Mike Malot's reaction after the fact? He was down for a long time. I certainly believe that our good friend, the Massachusetts native Kevin McDonald, let him take a few more punches than I would like. And I have to say, right, because I'm not here to make friends, I am paid to be critical, right? Kevin McDonald has been on the wrong end of some of the earliest, most premature stoppages I have ever seen. I think the worst one I've actually seen was the first fight between Surrey City and Ramon Taveras on the Contender Series. Way too early there. If memory serves, TJ Dillashaw, Henry Cejudo was also Kevin McDonald. And so I'm seeing Kevin in there, and I'm like, now I think Kevin's going to have a long leash because of some of the recent things that have happened to him in there. And, you know, thank goodness that Neil Magny wasn't sort of, deprived of a win here because the referee wanted to let things go too long. I thought he let things go too long. But Ray, did you see that reaction from Malott after the fact?
Yeah, no, definitely. Maybe, listen, we'd have to hear from him too. Maybe something was wrong. Maybe, the weight cut, or he was everybody in New York is sick. Everybody. Like, nobody's escaping getting some sort of sickness. They don't even know half the times what it is. So we'd have to hear from him. But the reaction, the whole thing was not a good look. If you're looking for the future, I don't think that was a good look at all. And he's going to have to make some adjustments, because I do think he's a super talented kid. I like his personality. He seems like a great guy, but it's time to make some adjustments.
Yeah, I think, John, in that third round, I think Mike Malott was kind of on the railroad tracks, and he was seeing a train coming. And when he actually got hit by it, he was like, I did this to myself. I did this to myself. I'm sitting here. I'm still trying to process what the hell happened. This is a nightmare. I was winning the first two rounds. Not only was I winning, I was pretty much dominating the first two rounds, a lot of it on the ground. And here I am on the ground, and I just lost with 15 seconds to go in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot to process.
Yeah.
And I think he saw his whole career just take a completely different shift. Not to say he can't come back from this. He can, but it's going to be tough. And having that happen to you in that way, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, this was set up as a showcase fight for Mike Malott in Canada, and he was unable to deliver. And I have a T-shirt in my closet. It says, "What would Darren Elkins do?" Right? That's his former teammate. And I think about Darren Elkins in a lot of these situations, because Darren Elkins is in the danger of like dying from blood loss in there, and he's not looking for a way out of there. So on the scale of, there have been a lot of fight. You can tell with certain fighters with body language when they are trying to live to fight another day, whether it's Frank Mir, Chael Sonnen, Mike Malott in this instance. There have been guys who give you the sign, and then the other end of that spectrum is Darren Elkins. His wife's probably sitting home like, Darren, please just live to fight another day, honey. Don't prove your toughness here, So, I do think you articulated that well, Kenny. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, and John, what you're saying is mindset. That's it. It's mindset. You know what I mean? And I'm going to tell you something. As a coach, all of this stuff the coaches see in the gym. They do see it. They know, like sometimes I mess with, a couple of guys. Who do you think's going to make it to the top? You know what I mean? Like, you could tell the guys that are going to make it and the guys that aren't going to make it. You know what I mean? So his coaches probably know something we don't know. But what you're saying, Elkins makes a decision that he's going to fight his fucking balls off. And that's it, period. End of story. Almost like Strickland. I'm willing to bleed for you. Those guys, those guys tried to kill each other, and they both, no sold a lot of stuff. Strickland's getting kicked in the head. He's acting like nothing's going on. I mean, these guys accept the responsibility of fighting. And it's just that I don't want to say it's that simple, but it's kind of that simple, man. You got to have the right mindset. You could tell the guys that do, and it's easy to tell the guys that don't.
What'd you make of the main event? I thought it was just unbelievably captivating, and really what we needed after the co-headliner, kind of changed the vibe in that building a little bit.
Yeah, thank God for that, because the co-main, I'm happy for Raquel. That just didn't look like a championship fight to me, if I'm being honest. I mean, And more Bueno Silva. Just I don't even know what I was looking at, but I'm happy for Raquel. She's been around for a while, and I'm glad to see her get something. I know the first one didn't go good, and it was a rough situation. So even to overcome that adversity back then and wait this long, I'm glad she got it done. But
yeah, mix of emotions on the co-headliner for sure. We all want to celebrate Raquel Pennington, and she's a good friend of mine. But yeah, I don't know that, Kenny, there's any greater criticism that can be levied than just to say it didn't look like championship level MMA. And it's a big knock on the division because a lot of these women are older, right? And there aren't really any young contenders at 135 pounds that the fan base is going to get excited about. Juliana Pena is fantastic, and she's a former champion. But beyond that, the cupboard at 35 is pretty bare. So a lot of people are suggestive of, hey, if this is your two best at 135 right now, who's next walking through that door?
Yeah,
it's tough. I think it's a reminder that, women's MMA is still new. They're still learning. If we were to count all of the male mixed martial arts fighters out there and compare that to all the female mixed martial arts fighters out there, especially at the pro level, there'd be a significant difference, right? And the reason I'm saying that is because it just hasn't been around as much. You don't have as many females to test yourself, to get better. MMA promotions that are willing to put on these fights, all that stuff. So it's still growing. It's still growing. It's still getting better. And not to mention, there's always going to be certain divisions that are going to be weaker than others, right? For whatever reason. And I think that's one of those divisions. So it wasn't a great way to kind of get a new champion in that division. I do agree with Ray. There was a lot of sloppy stuff there back and forth, but the toughness displayed by Pennington was extremely impressive. She's been around this sport for a very long time. It was clear that she came into this fight with a different focus, with a different level of conditioning that she has in some of her previous fights. Bueno Silva, she has a lot of talent. I think she faded in some really critical areas. And it's tough, right? I'm not a girl or anything like that, or, on fight week, I haven't really seen too much of that.
Are you sure?
I know, as far as I know.
You're not a girl, Kenny.
I identify as Anik Florian this week. But, but as far as like her, getting a really emotional in a lot of different spots, I said, how is she going to deal when she gets emotional during the fight? You don't want to be able to crumble in some of those tough spots. And I think Pennington was able to show a little bit more toughness and a little bit more focus and composure in a lot of those tough spots. And I think that was the difference.
Yeah.
Ray, can I get your thoughts on the main event?
Main event, look, I didn't score the fight. I watched it. I was entertained to hell. That's what I was doing. I really enjoyed the fight. I would have given it to Strickland, I think, but either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, nobody got robbed. I just thought Strickland kind of controlled the pace with. I'll tell you what. Let me just give you my thoughts. I thought he controlled the pace with the jab, but really not much more than that. Occasionally lands the right hand. Look, we learned a lot. We learned that Dricus does have 5 rounds in him. That's the first thing. 5 rounds against a guy that could throw heavy volume. So that's a huge thing for Dricus. But Dricus did impose his will, and he kept going forward. He had Sean going backwards, which I didn't think he was going to be able to do. I thought Sean would take him into those deep waters and drown him. But I think, the first 3 or 4 rounds, it was – he got tired too. You could see the problem. The only thing my criticism of Sean is at the end, he was getting just as sloppy as Dricus. He came out of himself a little bit. He held that jab. He held the overhand right. He was looking great. I thought he could have used more of the teep kicks to back him up, which he normally does. But yeah, either way, anybody who won that fight, I don't think anybody could complain. But I'm saying Dricus is the surprise in that fight to me. He was able to go 5 rounds. He did push forward, kind of used his head as a defensive mechanism, which is okay. If he's a big, strong kid, he's entitled to that. But I thought it was an entertaining fight. I think that's what they wanted.
Ray, would you have been nervous after round 4, heading into round 5? If you were in Strickland's corner, would you have been concerned about the scorecard a little bit there too?
Yeah, I would have been concerned at that point.
Yeah.
I think First off, Eric Nixick did agree. He put up a great post. I mean, very classy act. But he said it in the third. He said it in the third round, though. He didn't like that. He didn't like the third.
Yeah, he didn't like that.
He saw it going. He saw it going in the wrong direction. Could he have been a little more, insightful with trying to rally his guy? Yeah, I think so.
All right, well, we now are privileged to have 5 minutes with the newly minted, undisputed UFC middleweight champion, Dricus Du Plessis. Dricus, very gracious of you to join us. I know you're traveling home on Wednesday, but you're still in Toronto. And for all of those of us who have witnessed the way you have conducted yourself over 7 UFC fight weeks, 7 wins, 7 fighter meetings, so gracious with the fan base and the media, we tip our caps to you. Still Knox is on top of the world, and you deserve it, my man. Congratulations.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, gents. It's great to be here, great to talk with you. And, of course, having this bad boy next to me, I mean, it means the world. And I'm incredibly happy where I am right now.
Well, we're going to be respectful of your time, but I do want to start with the middle portions of this fight. Daniel Cormier passed me a note after round 4, and it said 3-1 DDP. And those of us felt like on the broadcast that you had controlled the middle portions of the fight, 1 rounds 2, 3, and 4. There was tremendous impact, we thought, to everything you were doing offensively. How close did the fight feel as you were in it?
Yeah, the fight felt pretty close. I mean, I knew I lost to round 1 when I went to the corner because that was our game plan. Our game plan was to fight Sean Strickland's fight in the first 2 rounds, but fighting the exact fight that he would fight. So going forward and landing one punch, one kick. And that would surprise them a little because they would think I'm going to come out with the big bombs early. And after the first round, I went to the corner and I said, I think we have to, and obviously my coach would shout to me when the round's about to end to get that takedown. And we made sure we got that at the end of every round to either level the playing field or to make sure we tipped the round in our favor. So that was our plan. It wasn't to get him down and hold him down. It was to get the takedown, secure a position, get back up. And after the first round, I went into the corner and I said, I think we have to do a little bit more than that because we lost that round. And he said, you definitely did. And I felt we won that. He said he thinks it was very close, but my coach said I think we won that round, but it was very close. 3 and 4, I definitely won those rounds. I felt incredibly good in those rounds, especially in round 4. I felt it's funny that it happened that way, but after round 3, during round 3, I could see Sean Strickland's face, and I could see him going, I saw him backpedaling and getting tired, and I felt this is great for me. So from round 3, we started fighting my fight in terms of now I'm putting the combo together, trying to land the big shots. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough fight.
Dricus, I'm curious about the power of Sean Strickland. The jab got your eye to swell a little bit early. You were able to get it back into control and bring the fight back in your favor. Was it one of those techniques where it accumulated over time? You're like, oh shit, I can't really see well out of the eye. Or was it immediately one of those things like, man, this guy's jab is hurting me?
No, what happened was that was surprising because he jabbed the first jab he threw. I took it. I just looked at it and I took it right on the forehead. And I went, well, that is solid, but it's not powerful like I'm going to go out. He's going to drop me or rock me with it at all. It was just a solid jab. Then I thought, okay, this is his weapon. I immediately knew that. But I never thought that this is going to put me in danger. So I just took it. I took the jab and I thought, okay, if I can take the jab, that's where I'm going to punch off. Every time he lands that jab, I let him land the jab and I can get off that. And after the first jab, second jab, then he jabbed me on my eye and it didn't hurt, but all of a sudden I could see my eye closing, starting to close, and I go, shit, you can't just take these shots, man.
So it was
with
the
these small
of these shots.
Yeah, and I realized with this small gloves, because his jab is really good. It's not that fast. You can see it coming. It's a solid jab. It feels like a hammer fist, like boom, boom. And every time I saw my eye start closing, and all of a sudden my eye was completely shut for I think it was in the first round. My eye was completely shut.
Yeah.
And I just immediately realized you have to start parrying this jab. You have to start getting out of the way of this jab because it didn't hurt me, but it's beating up your face. It's a 4-ounce glove.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I had to start making the adjustments.
Yeah. And Dricus, just want to say, first off, congratulations. I think you're a great ambassador to the sport. I'll always be a fan of the fact that after that fight, you didn't even think of having a lawsuit. I think that's a stand-up guy. Those are the guys I love, and I think you're going to carry yourself as a really, really good champion. Were you when they were announcing the decision? Were you totally convinced you won, or did you have some wiggle room in there where it could go either way?
Before, thank you. Firstly, before we went to a split decision, in my mind, I won the fight. I felt going to the fifth. I honestly feel even in the fifth round, I feel Sean Strickland gave it his all, but only at the end of the round. I felt that I controlled that fifth round up until the very, very end, where he started, and how I took that when he started throwing those just haymakers. And I took that as he's corner shouted 30 seconds.
Yeah,
30 seconds of this round left. And he went for it. And I thought, in my mind, I went, yeah, because this is his Hail Mary. He is losing this fight. And I had in my mind, I really honestly thought that I won the fight. And directly after the bell, I went to my coach and my brother, and I went, we got it. And they both said, yes, I think we got it. Because I had it that we got this fight.
Yeah.
And when they started announcing the split decision, the word "and" has never felt so long. and I'm like, Mr. Buffer, come on.
let me tell you, Dricus, it feels long when you're watching the fight. You're not even fighting. So I guarantee you, for you, it's got to be 10 times.
Oh man, it was.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. When Matt Serra fought Matt Hughes, I thought Serra won the fight, and now they both named Matt, right? So as he
I had to deal with the Matt too.
Oh my God, you had to deal with the same name. I almost died. I really thought we had to fight. It was crazy, but so I get where you're coming from, and that wasn't even with the same name, So
we got a couple more minutes here with the new undisputed UFC middleweight champion, Dricus Du Plessis. I quickly wanted to ask you about just your collectedness and your composure for all of these big fights, because I have said in the past that I think Sean Strickland is a big game player. As these fights get bigger, you just seem to get better. I know the wealth of championship experience in South Africa, KSW, but when you hit that tunnel, bro, like it just seems like you're ready to go. So it seemed like there wasn't anything different in terms of UFC championship nerves. You seem ready to go, even if you didn't win round one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was it was an important part of this fight. There was a lot of questions on my cardio, and
without a doubt,
and people had asked the question, can this guy go 5 rounds? And I always said yes, because when I train, I can, but I've never done it in a fight, never. And when I got into this fight, when I went to the corner after the third round, my first time ever going past the third round, I told my coach, oh, this guy's in trouble. I told him that because I felt amazing in the round, entering round 4, and I could see. But it was all about going out there and sticking to the plan and don't get reckless. I wasn't conserving energy, and there wasn't a stage in the fight where I thought, don't do this because you might get tired. I just fought my fight. I fought the game plan we had. I fought everything that we were planning, and it worked out great. And as for the championship mindset, when you get to a level, when you've walked out there to fight Robert Whittaker, that it doesn't really matter if there's a belt on the line or not. The pressure you feel there, the magnitude of that moment is as big as it's going to get.
Well, we're so excited for the Dricus Du Plessis era. Before I let you go, I can't speak to the financial swing for you if you fight at UFC 300 as somebody who will now make pay-per-view points as a champion, or maybe fight a few months or weeks thereafter at UFC 302. But we're 11 weeks out from UFC 300. Look like the right foot was maybe in a boot, but you've already done some healing. Your face looks fantastic. So what can you tell us about this first title defense and how realistic UFC 300 in 11 weeks might be?
Oh, listen, I'm not seeing any doctors or anything here in Canada. I'm flying back tomorrow night. I'm gonna be, as soon as I arrive, same day, I'll be in the MRI machine, making sure that how the body's looking. Right now, I feel a little bit beat up. Face healed up nicely. Face is not that bad. Legs were pretty beat up. Even before the fight, I had a couple of things, but nothing serious. Nothing serious. It's a little bit hard to step on the foot right now. No, I have a boot in the right one, but the left one is just as banged up. But they didn't have two boots, so I had to make the decision. And so at first they wanted to give me. They go the medical personnel at the UFC goes, let's put you in a boot, your foot, because I'm really struggling. And I go, there's no way I'm putting my foot in a boot. It's fine. I'm doing media. It's fine. Then I cool down. I take a shower. I put on my suit. I go, yeah, okay, give me that boot. And they said, okay, and we have the crutches. We have the crutches. I'm like, there's no way I'm walking on crutches.
Yeah, that adrenaline is a good drug, isn't it?
Yeah, I walked to my first interview. After that first interview, I go, okay, give me the crutches. Then I walk to the crutches. Yesterday morning, I wake up and I tell my girlfriend, hey, phone the lobby and ask them if they have a wheelchair.
Well, I gotta say,
I went down to breakfast in a wheelchair because I couldn't walk on either leg.
Man, well, whenever it happens, man, we can't wait to see it. And I know
this is worth it. This is worth it.
That world championship, it couldn't happen to a better guy. I'm so happy for Mornay Visser and the entire team and your family and 100+ family and friends, all from South Africa, descend upon Toronto, watch parties everywhere in South Africa. Congratulations. You're very gracious to give us a few minutes, man. I can't wait to shake your hand and congratulate you in a few months. And maybe we'll see you April 13th, my man, okay?
That'll be amazing. I would love to be on UFC 300. It's going to be historic. Thank you for having me, James. It means the world. Thank you.
You're the man. There he is.
Congrats, man.
Have a good one, Jed.
Congrats, man.
UFC middleweight champion, South Africa's Dricus Du Plessis. Absolutely incredible.
I got to tell you, just a great guy. You get the feel. That's what I say. I like the way he conducts himself. Look, he made a believer out of me. I'll be honest with you. I think I've been not seeing anything all the time, but he's always just conducted himself like a true – he conducts himself like a champion. I think he's going to really represent well, and he's a likable guy. He really is.
I think everyone should be really glad that I never won a belt because I'd be walking around with a sport coat and no shirt underneath 24/7 from that point. Like, just like Dricus. I love it. It's a great look.
He's going to do it. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, he's going to say he's going to do it Tim Sylvia. Remember Tim?
Wherever he went, that thing was there.
He wore that thing like a belt you'd wear on your suit.
Right. Hey, Ray, we appreciate the extended time. Thank you for sticking around for our chat with Dricus Du Plessis. And even just him, getting out of bed to join us for a few minutes today speaks to a man making a commitment
100%.
to honor it.
He's a professional, John. You could see it.
Yeah. Ray, have a great day and a better evening. We got to fly. We got another guest in the can, but thank you. You got anything else on 297?
Right, 1 second. I want to thank both of you guys for that check. I want all the people, the Minutemen, the check that was in the mail got to my house. You guys are very generous. Thank you very much for everything. Love you guys. And let's keep it going.
If you really want to know, it was
you
my
resend
twin brother Jay and Kenny who thought you should get a little bit more. So,
John tried to talk down the price.
Hey, Scrooge, I appreciate your honesty. And thank God for those two guys because I was very happy.
Yeah. Hey, have a great day, buddy. Better evening. We'll talk to you next week.
Take it easy, guys. I'll see you. Bye.
Ray Longo Minute every week here on the Anik and Florian podcast as we celebrate the undisputed UFC middleweight champion Dricus Du Plessis. And I thought maybe most interesting in that conversation, Kenny, was just how good he felt on the stool after round 3, because you really don't know until you get there. And I do think when you have a style that is so offensive and so finish focused, sometimes even if you put in all the right work in terms of the cardiovascular base, it can still abandon you. But we are going to go right back to the guest line right now, and we are thrilled to welcome in my good friend, a longtime member of the mixed martial arts media, Severe MMA, Sean Sheehan. My man, thanks for the short notice step up today. How we doing?
Not too well. Carrying a bit of a cold, to be honest. But I was listening to Dricus there talking about having to pick which foot to put a boot on. I don't feel as bad maybe now after that. My complaints aren't as big as his. So
yeah.
I'm okay. I'm not too bad now. It was a great main event anyway, and want to talk about it. There was a lot of talking points from the card, not the best card of all time, but
yeah,
it feels like there hasn't been a card with as many talking points and as many like small, maybe controversial things that happened.
Right.
So, lots to talk about, I suppose.
Yes, and if there are things that we don't address before we let you go, I certainly want you to bring those to the air. I would imagine for you, given all the content that you push out, you sort of stole my thunder there by setting it up as beautifully as you did. But I'm wondering if you're watching a show like this and thinking, A, there's just so much for me to talk about, and B, Anik's probably going to call after that main event.
There was a little bit of that, all right. It's been a while with the break, and then there weren't that many controversial decisions. So yeah, there was. And when you see a 10-7 as well in the middle of a card, you're thinking like, well, okay, we're gonna be having a few chats about this. So I think that when we see 10-7s, we don't see them that often. It's usually a positive chat, so that's a good thing. And yeah, so lots to talk about.
Well, I will start by suggesting that if anybody really wants to be informed when it comes to mixed martial arts scoring and criteria and judging, scoring, interpretation, all of that, just go to @Sheehan BA on X, and there's a video populated that he has pinned right at the top of his page. And even someone like me, I try to watch this thing every 6 or 8 weeks, because when we have a situation like Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev, sometimes I'm in my own head thinking that I don't know exactly what the rule is. But let us begin, Sean, if we could, with the main event. And I guess if you want to throw your scorecard out there, that is fine. But overall, what were your thoughts on just a great first championship main event of 2024?
Yeah, I thought it was very close. I scored it 3-2 for Strickland, but obviously with the third round, my swing round as well. Look, I think it's kind of a 4-round fight more than anything else. I think the fifth, I think most people would agree that Strickland won it. And even you could even say the first as well. I think most people would agree Strickland won that as well. And you could say the fourth, that Dricus won it. So most people would agree with that as well. So I think from a competitive fight, 1-4, from a judging fight, it's almost 2 and 3 that we just need to talk about. 2 is an interesting one, because I do think Dricus won it. I think most people would agree that Dricus won it. We also sometimes have to remember that Strickland won the first. He is the champion, and sometimes in our mind we almost want the challenger to win the second, so we have a competitive fight going into 2, 3, 4, and 5, because if you're 2-0 up after 2, you only have to win one more round, and then so sometimes we have to realize that in our own head and watch it with a cooler mind. Now, having said that, I still do think Dricus did win that second round. So for me, it comes down to the third. I think the third was very interesting in that it wasn't that interesting. Not much landed in terms of big, impactful blows. I think until the very last shot of the round, where Strickland landed a very nice left hook. And honestly, that was a big part of me scoring it for him. Like in a round like that, you know, we when we're watching a round, what are we always looking for? We're always looking for the big, impactful moments, whether it is, you know, a big elbow that cuts you, or a big shot that knocks you down, or a guillotine that maybe someone has to struggle out of, a rear naked choke that they have to pry the hands off of, you know, something like that, something that's going towards the end of the fight. There was almost nothing like that in the third round. So what do we score on? We scored on who landed the most shots and who had the biggest impact from those shots. I think there was very little in it between them. Like Dricus, as he said himself there just before I came on, he was talking about how, and you said it to him, how the impact of his shots looked like it was more than Strickland's. And I think the more the fight went on, the less shots Strickland landed, and between 1 and 4, we'll leave 5 out of it for a second. And I think Dricus, if he had the fight again, I think he'd win it more easily, because I think he'd land more shots and he'd have a little bit more confidence. It's hard to be as confident when you're kind of taking a guy down. He did take Strickland's offense down throughout those first 4 rounds, but he didn't land enough shots to make it clear, right? So I think the third round was a bit most evident part of that. In the fourth round, he did exactly that. Like, I think if the fight happened again, I think he'd probably have 3 or 4 rounds like the fourth round, because he knows exactly what to do. But in that third round, I just think he was missing a little bit. Strickland was realizing, okay, Dricus is kind of coming into this a bit. Let's roll back a little bit, maybe not throw as many shots. And because he wasn't throwing as many shots, he wasn't giving Dricus as many opportunities to land, and he wasn't landing as many shots. So I think it came down to that late Strickland shot, the few Strickland jabs that were landing versus the 3 or 4 shots that Dricus landed. It's a toss of a coin. I don't think there's a strong argument either way. I'd argue Strickland just. I think most people are arguing Du Plessis, and I couldn't say that they're wrong at all. So I don't think it's a controversial fight at all. It was just extremely, extremely close. And look at the judges as well. All 3 judges scored 4 of the rounds exactly the same. It came down to that 3rd round. So that's pretty consistent.
So, we talked about this off the top of the show, and I guess I just want maybe you to address these folks. Those folks, I understand the dissatisfaction for MMA fans when they see a champion lose his belt and it's a close fight. But to those people who suggest that somehow a champion should be rewarded for making that walk as such, I don't even know if it's an antiquated concept as much as it's such a bad concept. Like, I mean, are there people out there, obviously not employed judges, but do you feel like a big chunk of this fan base, like if they see a close round, they just give it to the champ because he's the champ? Like, what are we doing, Shawnee?
There's a lot of idiots out there. I mean, like we can't. If we keep talking about the idiots all the time, we'll just become idiots ourselves.
Sorry for bringing them up.
No, but I hear it all the time. It's a weird. This one's especially a weird one, right? Because Sean Strickland got the title shot against Israel Adesanya because Dricus Du Plessis was injured, if I'm not wrong, and they wanted to make a title shot quickly. So, like, the only reason he's the champion and Dricus isn't the champion, possibly, is because he got the shot first. It could easily have been Dricus was the champion defending against Sean Strickland.
Great point. Great point.
And another point, right? When that fight starts, no one is the champion. That it's like to be the champ, you have to beat the champ comes from pro wrestling. Ric Flair and all that. View it as a pro wrestling ladder match. That belt is hung above the cage, and no one owns it until someone wins, goes up, collects it, and then Hoyt hands it to them, and then they're the champion. That is in limbo until the fight ends. It's no one is the champion when you step in there. So it's just nonsense. There's a rule set there. There's a criteria there to win every round, and that's how the round winner is picked.
Sean Sheehan with us here on the Anik Florian podcast. Check out his content, Severe MMA, also on SureDog.com. So I want to almost let you prioritize what we talk about, but there was an incident in the pay-per-view opener, Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev, Mark Goddard stopping the action because of knees that he deemed to be illegal. Some suggesting that Evloev was playing the game a little bit. How'd that play out from your vantage point?
Well, it's interesting because they're using the older rules in Toronto. So you just basically, any part of your body apart from the soles of your feet being on the ground makes you a grounded fighter. So look, Mark Goddard can only officiate the rules which the fight is being fought under. So he made the right decision there. The biggest issue, I
didn't even know that until you said that, and I'm commentating the fight.
That's a massive problem. It's people always saying, my colleague Ian O'Neill said it to me on the podcast this week, what are we doing in 2024 having commissions worldwide? You've one rule set here, one rule set there. It's awful. And I come on here to talk about judging all the time, and I've great sympathy for the judges and the referees and the officials. I've very little sympathy for these commissions because they're the ones making the decisions that make it harder on the refs, judges, never mind the fighters, never mind the coaches. If you're Faraz Zahabi or Eric Nixick or something, you're trying to coach your fighter and give him all the information beforehand. You mightn't even know that information until you get there that week, and it's very tough. Like we saw, this is a wilder bit of an example now, but Demetrius Johnson, when he went to one championship and he had to fight under a rule set where grounded knees were allowed, he got knocked out in one of his first fights because it's very, very tough to adjust your game to a different rule set where that's allowed. Now it's not as big of a rule change, I suppose, in Toronto compared to maybe most of the places in America now. But you get what I mean. It's you have to be. You have to have your mindset to the right rule set. But I think just the biggest point I would make on that, right? We understand the rule was a different rule. I think most people don't like it. I think most people would like the new rule better. I think a lot of people would argue the knee should be legal anyway, but that's a discussion for another day. The biggest thing there is the judging, right? So how is a judge supposed to judge that? Do they say, right, all 4 of those knees don't score? Do they say, okay, only 1 knee was illegal, so we'll score the first 3 knees? That's a very tough job for a judge to decipher. Maybe the judge that was on that side of the cage who saw 3 clearly legal knees will score them, and then Mark Goddard called one illegal, so they're not going to score that. But what about the people at the other side of it? Like, it's, and I'm not blaming anyone here. I'm just saying exactly what happened, and it's a very tough situation. I think in future, maybe something like maybe Mark Goddard or Kevin McDonald, whoever the referee is, could go to each judge and just say, first 3 knees legal, last one illegal. Go to the next judge, do the same thing, just so we know what to score. So it was a very tough situation, that one.
Not to mention the momentum kind of taken away from someone like Arnold Allen, who's in the potential mist of maybe finishing that fight. And I agree. I think there was one that was close. I think a few of them, he actually wasn't hitting him when the hand was touching, but I don't know. That was a crazy fight.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think, I do think Mark Goddard, in hindsight, definitely made the right decision under the rule set which the fight was taken. So I don't think we can criticize Mark Goddard in any way, shape, or form. We can criticize the commission who put that rule set in, and I think rightly so, because it did swing it away from Arnold Allen, but Mark Goddard had to make that decision. The biggest criticism I would have in that fight is I think Arnold Allen won the fight. I
thought it too, yeah.
Yeah, like those takedowns late. Like, Kenny, like, you're a great grappler. When you watch the grappling in the last 90 seconds of that round, to my mind, you can speak better than this to me, but Arnold Allen was winning that for me. Like, he was getting taken down. Like,
Sean, I would say even in round 1, Evloev was very aggressive pursuing the takedown, but those weren't takedowns. I wouldn't consider that effective grappling. They were basically canceling each other out. So then what do we go to? We'd go to the striking. So, when I was watching the fight, I was like, okay, I had picked, Arnold Allen as an upset on the podcast. I was like, okay, I think we got this. But then, everything kind of pointed to Evloev. So I was kind of confused on that as well. So I'm glad I'm hearing, someone who I consider an expert when it comes to rules agree with me there. But I just thought that the takedowns were really nullified by Arnold Allen in round 1 and round 3. And I thought Evloev only won round 2. So it was a bit confusing there.
Yeah, I would 100% totally agree. I think the point about the last 90 seconds of round 1, where Evloev was taking him down and Arnold Allen was rolling out of it now, a lot of people would argue let's leave that fight aside for a second, but a takedown should score, or getting on top and having top control should score, or dominating the grappling should score. And whereas I think judges and myself would look at it more as like, when you get into a position to get a submission, or when you get a submission on, or forcing someone to defend, is what scores more highly. In this fight, I'd argue that the people on the first example there who want to score, dominating the positions, they don't even have an argument for Evloev in that, because as you said there, Kenya, I think Arnold Allen was winning that as well. So I find it very hard to know how he went. No, it wasn't a blowaway round or anything. It was still relatively close. But I think, Arnold Allen, to me, watching at home, was landing the harder shots. At the start of that, he was rocking his head back multiple times. He was landing some big shots. And I thought he won that round. As I said, not a blowaway, but to me, throughout the whole fight, throughout the whole night, throughout the whole pay-per-view, that was the only round I really had a problem with. I think all the rest of them were very close.
All right, a few more minutes here with Sean Sheehan. I'm going to highlight some other things that happened on this night, and you can go in any direction you want. Sean Woodson beats Charles Air Jourdain. I thought he won the fight. It was a split decision, but the communication is veteran voice of the Octagon, Bruce Buffer, tells Jaron Vallel, referee, who wins the fight. So I understand that Charles and Sean, those first names, sound alike. Not quite like Matt and Matt, but they sound alike. But Jaron Vallel has been communicated to by Bruce Buffer. He knows Sean Woodson won the fight. So what the fuck you doing raising Charles Jourdain's hand? That was messy. Anything for us on that?
Yeah, it was a bit weird. I think it was a bit like the time like the Oscar went to the wrong person or something, wasn't it? And then to call the other person out. Yeah, it was a bit odd, but yeah, I don't think that was a split decision either. To be honest, I think Sean Woodson won that one.
Okay, yeah, I agree,
pretty comfortably. The other fight was the Tavares and the Saidi fight, and obviously the cut in the second round, and we had obviously a lot of talk and the commentary about cuts and everything like that. The cut happened in the second round. It was a very close round, and 2 of the 3 judges scored it for the guy who got cut. So we've had, I suppose, that discussion before, and we'll have it many times again. It's impact is not just lacerations. Lacerations are part of it, and they definitely score more, but the actual impact in terms of someone getting knocked down or someone getting badly concussed is a big part. And just on the 10-7 as well, John, because I know we're probably cut for time.
Please.
I'll tell you why that 10-7 is important, and I discussed it on the Severe MMA podcast if people wanted a longer maybe discussion on it, but Sal D'Amato scored that 10-7. And you've talked about Sal before. Sal is the leader of the judges. People look up to Sal. Yep. And I met 4 or 5 of the judges there before Christmas at a Bellator event, and Sal was there as well, and we had a great chat. And they all kind of said, we look up to Sal. If Sal does something, it feels like we can also do it. And I think that is a great decision Sal made to give that a 10-7. Now, I actually don't think it was a 10-7. I think it was a 10-8, but it was close. But for him to give it a 10-7, it gives the opportunity for, whether you're Derek Cleary or Jordan Vallel or whoever you might be going into a fight and it's a borderline 10-7, you can give that fight 10-7. You can go into the meeting afterwards where the commission is saying, okay, why did you score that at 10-7? He can say, well, I watched Jasmine Jasovicius against Priscilla Cachoeira. Sal D'Amato scored that 10-7. I think this was a similar round, and that's why I scored it 10-7. So for Sal to put his head above the parapet to make that sort of decision, it's not an easy decision to make. We don't have that many 10-7s. You see, when people heard about it, what did they say? What are all the tweets? A rare 10-7, Yes. So I think that was a big decision, very brave judging and very good judging as well, and I think it'll help things in the future.
You articulated that well, and I like the adjective brave. We need brave judging. We need more liberal use of 10-8s and 10-7s. Even if I would defer to Sean Sheehan's scorecard over Sal D'Amato's and he had a 10-8, we need people in those seats to actually throw out 10-7s. Would you ever judge or no?
I probably couldn't. I've talked too much about.
Yeah, you talk too much shit.
Maybe an amateur fight in Ireland or something. But yeah, no, I don't think I can.
Why I am reluctant to shout out the live odds at times is because for me as a sports bettor, unless I'm looking at a live playable line, I don't even like throwing that out there because of the timing. But Surrey City at one point was the -425 live favorite, and I did think he won that fight. And I do feel bad for him a little bit. I feel like maybe they didn't get the fight of the night bonus in some part because Tavares missed weight, but I thought you highlighted that well. And I will just say of my criticism of Sal D'Amato, if you want to call it that, and please just know this is John Anik talking as mixed martial arts fan, not as MMA commentator, right? Because Sal's probably the judge that I'm closest to. Like if any judge is getting a Christmas card from me, it's probably him. But here is just my point. With a backdrop thesis statement that I believe we need more elite judges, and we don't have that. But Sal obviously is one of the best. But my whole thing is just, and I think you'll be dismissive of this because it's a little bit conspiracy theorist, but back in 2022, and I'll say this quickly, Sal D'Amato scored a main event at the Apex for Jack Hermanson. He had it 4-1 for Jack Hermanson, 49-46. Sean Sheehan, I have Sean Strickland in here. I was afraid I was going to do that. Sean Sheehan scored that fight 50-45 for Strickland. Not a single media scorecard on MMAdecisions.com had the fight for Jack Hermanson. Sal was roundly criticized for that card. And I remember thinking at the time, he's a human being with a subconscious. Next time he refs Sean Strickland, Sean's probably going to get the close rounds. Now, you can say to me, there's no fucking way, John, Sal is elite. He would never let that cloud into his brain, but he can't control every fucking stem of his brain. So my suggestion is if you have a wayward scorecard, a scorecard like that is so wayward, if we had enough elite judges, I would like to see Sal D'Amato removed from the next few Sean Strickland or Jack Hermanson fights, because even though I agree with Sal D'Amato's next scorecard, that was a split decision. He was the dissenting judge for Sean Strickland versus Jared Cannonier. I just think you can't help but have some sort of thing in your subconscious that I've been so wrong about this guy and his style relative to the masses before that in the close rounds here, my subconscious is giving the round to Sean Strickland. Am I crazy?
I think so, yeah. I think you are. Like I would argue, right, if that was the case, I actually think it would be the next fight on, in the next main event that you would look at adjusting your score more, because by the next time you judge a Sean Strickland fight, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, whatever. I don't think, and also, right, it goes against everything that judges, commissions, and all talk about. Because what do they talk about? They talk about fighter A versus fighter B, right? They're not looking at Sean Strickland. They're not looking at Dricus Du Plessis, and they shouldn't. Because if you bring in any preconceptions with you, you're going to look at a fight differently.
Right.
And I've spoken to judges about that before, and it's a massive thing that they avoid, and they consciously avoid it. You have to look at it down the middle, because you can go into a fight and you can think, you know, I don't know, an example, Mark Hunt versus JDS, right, years ago. Who hits harder, right? You could say, okay, maybe Mark Hunt, you think hits harder. But as the fight went on, you can think, actually, maybe not. You know, JDS actually hits harder. If you watch the fight with a preconception that Mark Hunt hits harder, you're going to score every punch he lands more. So you can't go in with that preconception. And it's more even like, say, like a jiu-jitsu guy is fighting a striker, and next thing, the jiu-jitsu guy starts beating up the striker on the feet, right?
Right.
Sometimes we can go overboard and say, oh, well, he's beating him up on the feet. We thought he was going to lose and we're going to score it more. But you can't do that. You have to look at it blue corner versus red corner. You have to look at it fighter A versus fighter B. And the judges do a great job of that. I would not question Sal D'Amato at all in that sort of realm. I don't think he has a bias. I also think he is and you know him, he's a very strong character. Yep. He is the type of guy that'll put in a card, everyone will criticize it, and he'll be thinking about it forever. He'll be thinking about the card because he'll go back and he'll watch it and he'll think, is that justifiable? Is that justifiable? Is that justifiable? Yeah. And if you say it is, fair enough, he can move on. And he'll say, okay, maybe I could do something better with that in the future. It's not going to be in the future with a Sean Strickland fight. It's going to be in the future with prelim 1 of the next weekend, right. Prelim 2 of the next weekend, main event of the next weekend. So no, I would dismiss that as a concern.
And I do think Sean Strickland is a hard guy to sort of assess, but 3 split decisions recently for Sean Strickland, and Sal D'Amato's been the dissenting judge, disagreeing with his contemporaries in all 3 of those fights, at least when it came to the final scorecard. All right, 2 more minutes with Sean Sheehan. I know that you feel like the issue is not the criteria, it's the overall knowledge and understanding of it. But if you could change one thing in MMA judging or scoring, would there be one thing?
I would take away well, there'd be a couple of things. I would take away the first 2 parts of the criteria. I take away the octagon control, I take away the effective aggressiveness, and I just have an impact. I'd simplify it. I know a lot of people want to add more things onto the criteria. I'd make it a lot simpler, because the problem with the criteria is, right, you could add on 100 pages and it still wouldn't give you every little intricacy. Like, you could add on 100 pages, and you, in that 100 pages, I guarantee you, if there was a criteria written with every little intricacy, you would not have a written line that would tell you exactly what to do in the Arnold Allen knees to the head situation. You wouldn't have it. Right. So you have to have, and I actually spoke to a judge today who had the exact same thing happen in a fight recently. And he said it was an absolute nightmare because the referee stopped them, assess them, and this was in a card that was it wasn't, let's put it this way, it wasn't in an English speaking region and didn't have an English speaking referee. So from his mind, the referee didn't even warn the fighter, so you just scored the knees even though they looked completely illegal. So Mark Goddard warned Aaron Allen, so you don't score the knees. But if someone doesn't warn the fighter, then you have to score the knees because they're not seen as illegal. So to know that situation, have been in that situation before, to be aware of it, it's absolutely massive. Like there's certain judges that have never scored an incomplete round. So, you know, it goes to the 3rd round, someone catches an illegal knee and it goes to the cards. You have to score 10 seconds of it. We saw it with over in PFL with the Brendan Loughnane Ryoji Kudo fight last year that I'm sure you were calling, Kenny. How many judges have had to score an incomplete round like that before? It doesn't happen that often. So to be put in that situation to do it, that is written in the criteria. But in that, look, and here's the example as well. That's the exact sort of situation where octagon control and effective aggressiveness are in the criteria, because if it's 10 or 15 seconds, you use that. Yeah.
So Sean, it would be that over the amount of blood in a round as the criteria. I'm kidding. I saw your tweet. No, I don't want to get you upset.
I'm bad enough on Twitter, but yeah. I know, John, you tried your best, John. In fairness, you tried your best, but what can you? What are you feeling?
That was hilarious.
Can I ask you a question? What are you feeling?
I can literally see John and Sean in my eyes, be like, it's short circuiting their brains. Yeah.
It's really not my habitual nature to correct anyone, especially a former world champion. Even earlier when we were talking today about UFC 300 and Kenny said 11 months instead of 11 weeks, I didn't correct him because it's not my nature. You know what I mean? So not to throw you under the bus now, but no, I sort of paused and there was some communication with my producer, Zach Candido, on Talkback, and just decided to sort of get in there a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think some people just... there's a stubbornness with me, with Dom. It is what it is. But I think bigger picture, Sean, you're just such a credit and an asset for us. And even in terms of that situation you were describing with Lockname, as a commentator too, you want to go through this stuff, right? Like, I can't remember the last time we invoked the old rules, and you breaking that news to the play-by-play guy 48 hours after the show should be alarming to MMA fans and people around the world. So, well, Sean, we appreciate you more than anything else. Severe MMA's Sean Sheehan at Sean Sheehan BA. Don't be a stranger, buddy. We'll probably talk to you in a few weeks. Sincerely appreciate the overtime today, sir.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Bye. Sean Sheehan with us here on the Anik Florian podcast, and that is going to do it. But rest assured, we are back to continue our UFC 297 recap coming up this very Wednesday. We will talk to Bilal. Remember the name Muhammad. We will also talk to Sean Strickland's chief corner, Eric Nixick. We'll get his thoughts on the fight with Dricus Du Plessis and continue to talk about everything that was 297. We'll give a little bit more shine to Raquel Pennington and Maida Bueno Silva as well. But we got to bounce on out of here. Thank you to everybody for joining us live. Thank you to our guests, Dricus Du Plessis, Frankie Edgar, Mark Henry, Ray Longo, and Sean Sheehan. Thank you to our producer, Cody Merrow. Thank you to Will Berger, Jason Anik, everybody else behind the scenes. For Ken Flo, I'm John Anik. We will see you coming up on Wednesday right here on the DraftKings YouTube channel. Until then, go later.
Cornbread. He's cornbread. Like the mix in a bowl, like the yeast in a roll. He's alive, he ain't dead. He's a soul to the bread.